Nightmare. Winter of the Terrible Snowman by Bryan. Chapter 1. It was winter. Professor Arms, Dr. Luther, and Mr. Evan was at Dr. Cluss. They had a mugful of coffee or hot chocolate. They went out for a walk in the woods. Then the sun was gone, and they were deep in the woods. Thankfully, Dr. Luther brought a flashlight in his pocket. Professor Arms said, "Where's the way to home?" "Dr. Cluss, this is your house." "This is not my house. It's the woods near my house," said Dr. Cluss. It was getting cold. Then they heard footsteps. Trees started to crackle. Professor Arms said, "It could be a wild animal or a monster." "Just kidding." Then they saw an old house. Dr. Luther went in. There was no people. There was rooms and a stairway. Then he started to open the door. So Mr. Evans said, "Run." They ran up the stairs. Then they went in a door. It was dark and cold in the room. Dr. Cluss bumped into something. It was a body. Fresh blood was at his body. Professor Arms got a rope and tied it to a table, then threw it out the window and climbed down. The others did the same. They found the way out of the forest. They ran to Dr. Cluss's house. They had thought that it was not an animal, but a monster. Chapter 2. After a few days, people at the town died. There was 54,802 people at the town, and a quarter of the people of the village died. Dr. Cluss didn't speak because his grandfather died 2 days ago. He was well, but the next morning he was covered in scratches and blood. All the peoples that died in the village died like this. Professor Arms said, "It is the creature we met in the woods. Whatever it is, then we must stop this creature," shouted Dr. Luther. Then they went in the woods. All of them brought a flashlight. They heard a sound. It was a growling noise. Then the trees started to break. Then a giant ball of ice hit the trees that was near them. Suddenly it became dark, and a cold wind blew the trees away. 2 red dots appeared from the dark. Mr. Arms said, "Those are eyes." Then a giant snowman appeared. It was around 4 to 5 meters. The eyes shone like fire. Then the teeth covered with blood came shooting after them. Dr. Cluss said, "Split! Split!" They ran. Then they had no weapon to fight back. But then the tooth struck and bit the arm of Professor Arms. And before the snowman tried to eat him, Dr. Luther struck and pushed Professor Arms out where he was. And the tooth split the ice. The ice cracked. Then Dr. Cluss got Mr. Evan and took the professor and Dr. Luther. Then he skated on the ice and took off out of the woods and went home. Then Dr. Cluss locked the door, window, even all the rooms, and went in the room's corner. And then Dr. Luther healed Professor Arms' arm. Then Mr. Evan looked at his great-grandmother's journal. He looked for a monster snowman. There it was. It says, "The Wedebecker just Mogest Flugest Klum Court." For short, the Wusperduk. It was a snowman with multiple power. It can freeze whatever it touches. Chapter 3. Then Professor Arm said, "Now I'm okay. Now we must kill this monster." Then Mr. Evans said, "It says, a blade of the sun must stab the monster's body." "It is a riddle," said Dr. Luther. Professor Arm said, "It means sunlight must pass his body. We have to distract that monster until morning. It is not that easy. He's too strong. Not even the tank can kill him. Plus, if we cut him into two, then he becomes two. Then if we can't capture him by hand, we'll do it with a rope," said Dr. Luther. They made plans. Chapter 4. Then when the snowman came out, Dr. Luther shouted, "Here! Here!" The snowman came, and a hard rope fell to the snowman, but it was useless. The snowman ripped the rope like paper and touched Dr. Luther. He turned into a creepy, mysterious piece of ice. Professor Arm said, "Oh no." Then the snowman turned, then broke all the trees. The snowman turned and broke the gates that Dr. Cluss made for safety. Then Professor Arms threw a stick with some fire at the edge. The fire lit up the place, then was struck at the snowman's body. The snowman let go of Dr. Luther, Dr. Cluss, and Mr. Evan. But it didn't last long. The snowman pulled the stick out and turned to Professor Arms. Then Mr. Evan got guns. They all shot to the demon. It did not work. It sucked up the power and was fine. The dawn was starting to break. Then the snowman disappeared in a storm of ice and snow. After the sun rose, Dr. Luther unfreeze, and they rested for some nights. By that time, the death of the humans were first there was 54,802 people. Now, only 2-1 of the humans died. At the time. Dr. Cluss said, "We have to do something." "Then if ropes don't work, then we'll do it with steel," said Dr. Luther. Professor Arm said, "Ridiculous. It made of snow. Nothing could trap him." "It is true," said Mr. Evan. It was morning, but there was no sun. But they went out to the village, and they heard a blood-covered scream. They all took out swords. It was the snowman. It was eating a live human. Chapter 5. The human was dead. The blood was at the monster's teeth. And Dr. Cluss said, I don't understand. It is morning. How?" Mr. Evan was not surprised. Professor Arm said, "Because there is no sun. The book says sunlight can kill the monster turned." And checked them. Then when they went off the house, it was dark. The moon was up in the air. The monster chased them. They went in the woods. The snowman needed a lot of time to get through the trees. Then they saw the snowman. He let out a minus 35-degree wind out of his mouth. Chapter 6. Sharp blades of ice formed and shot straight at them, and they tumbled into a pit. The snowman went away. They climbed up the pit and said, "We can't win him." Professor Arm said, "It will not be easy." They headed home. They did not sleep that night. Dr. Luther was at the living room reading. Mr. Evans was making a plan. And Mr. Evans said, "I know! The house in the woods. It is the monster's hideout." Professor Arm said, "So you are saying we wait in front of the house and trap him with a giant metal chamber with no way out?" "Yes, and trap him until sunrise." And Dr. Luther said, "We put a hard plastic so sunlight can come in." That's what I'm talking about." Dr. Cliff said, "That might work." And they hurried and set it everything for the hunt. Then the snowman came out, and the metal chamber went and trapped the monster. But this lasted 2 hours. Then the metal gave up. The snowman was loose. The metal was no match for the monstrous snowman. Then stared at Dr. Luther. And then suddenly the massive hand scratched Dr. Luther and the mouth opened. And Dr. Luther was about to go in the mouth of the monster. Chapter 7. Then Mr. Evans threw his sword. It cut the snowman's arm. Then Dr. Luther got his blade and cut the other hand of the monster. Then Professor Ames shot the blade to Dr. Cliss. Dr. Cliss grabbed the blade and now had 2 swords. And he acted fast. He cut the monster snowman's legs, and the snowman was trapped. But new legs grew from the monster and spoke in a language. And then he exploded in an incredible blast. Then Dr. Luther said, "It is done. The snowman disappeared." This time he was 8 meters. It's done. But the snowman reappeared. This time he was 8 meters. And roared furiously. And Mr. Evans threw a sword. It stabbed the eye of the monster. There the monster was fine. And the sword melted. Then the monster headed towards them. Professor Arm said, "Great!" Then suddenly the sun rose. The monster snowman ran away. And Dr. Luther said, "We were very lucky." And Mr. Evans said, "Yes." And they went out of the woods and hurried into the house. And Mr. Evans said, "Snowman has incredible senses. And we're going to kill him." Chapter 8. So they went in the house. They brought a flashlight. Then it was 4 a.m. So they went into the house. It was cold and dark, but there was no monster at the living room. And they went up the stairs. The stairs made a cracking noise. Then the 4 men found a door at the 24th stair. Then they opened the door. There was the monster eating his meal. And they shot an arrow. And the arrow hit the monster. The monster was now angry. It stood up and destroyed the house. Then Professor Arm said, "This house is gonna collapse!" "Run!" said Dr. Cluss. Then they ran down to the stairs. Then they ran down the stairs, and they reached the outside of the house. Then the house made a giant creak, and fell down with a monster snowman inside it. But the storm came. Then the snowman was standing in front of them. Dr. Lucy said, "How do we kill this thing?" And then they ran out. They ran till they were out of the woods. "Did we lose him?" Then a gust of wind blew, and the snowman was still there. Chapter 9. "Run," said Dr. Cluss. But Professor Arm said, "We can't escape. We have to fight it." Then Dr. Luther got an arrow. It shot to the monster snowman's body. At that time, Mr. Evans tied the legs of the monster snowman. The snowman fell down, and Professor Arms added a thick vine and tied the snowman's arms. The snowman did not move. But after 14 minutes, the snowman was free, and suddenly he became stronger. Then icicles formed and shot to Dr. Cluss. They had not won. Chapter 10. Then they ran to the village. The snowman just broke the houses that was in his way. Professor Arm said, "This is not good." And Dr. Luther said, "Do you think we will survive or die like the townspeople?" "Shut up," said Mr. Evans. "If you think you will die, then you really die." And then Dr. Luther said, "No time for talking." The snowman was fast, and Mr. Evans said, "How does a 5-meter giant run that fast? At least he shrunk to 5 meters. If he was 8, we would have died." "But still a snowman is after us," shouted Professor Arms. Dr. Luther said, and Mr. Evans said, Right. "Of course it's right," said Professor Arms. "No, right!" There was a house in front of them, so they turned right. Then Professor Arms said, "The snowman!" And the snowman was in front of them. And Dr. Luther said, "Not good, not good, not good." Then the monster snowman. Then the monster snowman spoke. "Then the will is done," said the snowman. Then Dr. Cluss said, "I don't know what to do." Then Dr. Luther said, "To the churchyard." Then they ran as fast as they could run. When they were close to the churchyard, Dr. Luther said, "Do we lose him?" The monster snowman was in front of them. And the Professor Arm said, "This guy is killing me!" And the snowman did not run away. They needed 30 minutes until daylight. Mr. Evans tied a rope to the tree and another tree. The snowman did fall down, and Professor Arms ran to the crushing machine. And activated it, and headed for the snowman, and hoped, "Please kill the monster now and it will be once and for all. And Dr. Luther fighteth the monster. And chapter 11. And Dr. Luther fighteth the monster. And the monster was about to eat Mr. Evan. Few more seconds and the mister would have been gone forever. But Professor Arms got the machine. It crashed the snowman. And Mr. Evan was saved. But the monster woke again. This time it crashed the crushing machine. And Professor Arms was in it. Then the snowman tried to eat the mobile. Then the sun rose. The snowman tried to escape, but it was too late for the snowman. The sun went through his body, and there was only snow in the ground. The end. Or is it?